Hi, we are here with the Bitcoin Design Guide Jam session number 21. Here's the correct slide here behind me. And as usual, we'll talk about what's going on with the ongoing guide work, maybe a few things, what's on the roadmap, what people are working on, if anybody wants feedback or discuss something, and then any new ideas, and things just go very organically from there. So we'll just kick it right off. I will pull up the roadmap. We talked a little bit before this, and there were different statements between we want to talk about big picture roadmap type of stuff, and we should just keep it kind of practical. So I don't know how we'll resolve it, but I'm sure it will naturally solve it, figure itself out. But in terms of our big roadmap, we have two milestones right now, which is one's called Lightning refinements, because after we finished the V2 of Lightning last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever that was, there were still just a whole bunch of small things. And then even more small things came out after reviewing it and some discussion. So we have this whole thing. And people have been working, just picking things up and working them off really well over the last week or so. And then the second one is just the website needs some fixes. Some of them have been lingering around for a long time. Other ones are fairly new. And then there's kind of a bigger chunk in there, which is rethinking about how people experience this whole website. Thinking about different use cases, why people show up, what they might be looking for, and then making sure we serve that well. And then there's unassigned stuff. And then we have 60, 46, 64 issues in total here. And some of them are unassigned. We don't have a bucket for on-chain right now. I think that's just kind of general in no milestone. And I think that's kind of where we are at this. And I think everybody here is kind of working on slightly different things, right? I'm working on a contacts page, did the activity page last week. Bosch, you're working on the requesting page, trying to wrap that up today. And just various other smaller issues are getting picked up and done within a few days, which is pretty sweet. But Bosch, you said you wanted to talk about the requesting page because you want to get that merged today if possible, right? Should we start there?
Yeah, so I've gone over your feedback as well as Pav's. I think you both left a comment about the withdrawal request. Like I did when I was doing this page, I was kind of a little bit unsure about where that kind of fit in because it's a different kind of way to kind of pretty unique way to make a payment. So probably need to address that still a little bit. It might be worth like having a receive page, getting the content on receiving and the requesting page into that page, as well as maybe have some stuff around withdrawal requests in there, but I'm not too sure because it's just a very unique kind of thing. It doesn't really like fit in any category like quite nicely. So what do you guys think about like withdrawals requests, which is LN URL withdrawals, and how do you see that fitting into the guide, and how should we discuss it and where should we discuss it? I guess is the point.
Does Bolt 12 also enable that? Or is it just LN URL withdrawal?
Yes, it does. So I went and asked Rusty Russell, and he said it's called a send invoice, a tag with Bolt 12. It means your wallet sends an invoice to be paid instead of requesting one. So yeah, you can. So LN URL withdrawal probably become obsolete with Bolt 12. I don't see why you'd want to use LN URL withdrawal, which requires a server if you can use Bolt 12.
Yeah, I think several Bolt things are basically more on-chain versions of LN URL. Or not, no, in-network versions is more
accurate. Like a native.
Yeah, Lightning Network Protocol versions.
Yeah. I think that could be a whole separate thing because the use case is pretty different too. The withdrawal is great for, let's say you have the Stacker News, that website, you drop 100 sats so you can vote on different articles and you decide you're done. The website still has, I don't know, 50, 60 sats on your account and you want to withdraw that. It's a fully automated process. So I think that's the type of use case, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, and I think that could have that could deserve its own discussion instead of being squeezed into requesting Bitcoin page.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, technically it is requesting, but there's something about it that feels different. It's like there's something about the interaction that feels like it serves a different purpose than just like asking somebody for $5.
And as well, like we really, like, it probably would be worth covering, like, how you would generate, if we're going to cover it, how you generate a withdrawal request. And like scanning one's pretty easy, but like the process of generating one is a bit unique in its sense. So like you'd probably want to do that separate from your general kind of requesting and sending flows, as you're going to be doing it in circumstances like if you say giving a refund or something like that.
So I'm not sure if you guys can hear me because Jitsi is crazy again. So I think withdrawing may fit in nicely within the merchant section, perhaps, but for now I would just leave it where it is. I don't think it deserves maybe a separate page because I don't see how it will fit in within the flows that we have and the structure that we have. It's just nesting it as a separate section or a page would be weird to me, but maybe we can just leave it there and then move it once the merchant section is ready, because withdrawal is basically refunding kind of thing, which merchants, as Boris said, would need to generate, and then you would need as a user to fetch it in somehow. So I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I think it would definitely suit a lot better in the merchant section.
Yep. Okay, so we'll wrap up this page, and then at some point we might extract this into something different.
Yeah, I think for now it kind of at least makes people aware that it exists, and like they can maybe go look into it a bit more in depth for their particular use case if they want. But I think it's good to have that kind of awareness there for now. We can come back to it.
And another, I'm not sure if this is totally accurate anymore, but here in my background, the requesting Bitcoin page is super long.
Yeah.
So that might be another reason why I think this is actually the version before your revision now.
The new revision
it might be
it's smaller. It's smaller
Yeah.
now, yeah.
But I think when you get to that length, it's kind of a sign that it might be time to split things up a little bit.
I don't think pages being too long is that big of an issue. Like if it's all relevant within the context, like requesting is probably one of the biggest things, particularly with like Lightning. There's so many different ways you can request payments. Like I think it's bound to be probably one of the bigger pages on the whole guide.
Yeah, well, it just becomes a bit more modular also.
I think there's different ways. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Just rambling.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you finished?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I think the length can be a concern just from a usability perspective, but it's like, well, how do you solve that? You know, one solution would be if a page is getting really, like if a page is getting really long, I think, you know, a lot of times we don't read things from start to finish, even if we should. We tend to skim things and look for the information that we need. So if a page starts to become really long, it kind of hurts the skimmability of it. And so, you know, one solution to that is, you know, you break it up and you put it into smaller pages. Another solution that you see a lot of, you know, docs and like developer docs using is just having more of like a menu bar that kind of, you know, gives you kind of like a little table of contents about what's on the page. I think like the LDK website had that, where it's like, you know, each heading on the page kind of becomes its own little link in the menu bar. So if we're having a problem where pages in the guide are starting to feel too long to us, maybe we might want to think about adjusting the navigation to better suit that. And that's obviously outside the scope of this PR, but just something to think about as we're, you know, looking at new navigation changes in the future.
Yeah, because I did kind of I haven't really like thought about this much, so it's just like I haven't really like fleshed the idea out, but potentially getting a lot of the content around receiving and refocusing the funding a wallet page around the nuances of receiving Bitcoin in general, because funding a wallet and receiving Bitcoin, like with Lightning, it's essentially the same concept. But there's a lot of like nuances there that we haven't kind of covered in a lot of detail in the guide, particularly when it comes to like LSPs, and because that's where a lot of the LSP and mobile wallet interactions happen on that kind of receiving end. Sometimes on the sending end as well, if you don't have enough like outbound liquidity. But they definitely play a big part on kind of like onboarding and receiving and constantly making channels as people receive more payments, like going forward and stuff. But I don't know. I'm going to come back to that, and I'll probably get some more clearer thoughts and make it easy for it within the week.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed also while detailing out the activity page and now the contacts page is that there's a ton of overlap. So it seems like there's interest in highly detailed UI specifications, and the more we do that, I think the more overlap we'll actually get, because so contacts, like contacts shows up in the activity screen. It shows up when you receive an invoice, you assign a contact. When you make a payment, you get an incoming payment. So many places all of this shows up. The activity screen shows up on other screens. Like it's all kind of gets interconnected. Error screens, there's something on the sending page right now at the bottom, but that's generally, it describes in general how to communicate around error screens, but it's really relevant to everything else too. So I do feel like the more detailed we get with those specifications, the more overlap there is, and maybe the more modular this whole thing needs to be, so we just don't keep repeating the same stuff over and over.
Do you think there'd be enough content to have a errors page within the daily spending wallet kind of section when we get to kind of bundling that all together?
So with errors, the way I think about it is that there's a general way to think about errors. So, the user is interacting with something, an error happens right when they interact with it, or it happens when they're not watching, or it happens when, overnight. It's a small error that the app can fix. It's an error where the user has one or two options, or where there's just one option, the user has to approve it. Where there are two or three options, or there's no option, the user has to get support somewhere. So there are different UI techniques around it too, how to communicate, what kind of components you can use and whatnot. And that's something that can be described in general. So no matter where an error happens, you just pick the right approach for it. And then you can have these user flow or feature or interaction specific errors. So, you're sending Bitcoin via Lightning and you don't have enough liquidity, that's something very unique to that particular interaction. So I think there's always a generic part to it, and then there are the specific parts, and those can be in different places.
Maybe what might be a good way of communicating that to people, Christoph, would be to say, maybe there's an errors page, and it's got some content on it, very much like what's in your background right now, and you have this kind of template that's kind of what you were just describing. That's like, title of error, brief description, user-friendly description of error, option 1, option 2, option 3, and then take that template and show an example of 2 different user flows. One could be like a sending error, the other one could be a receiving error, or something like that, and to just kind of explain what you're trying to describe, that basically any error can be generalized down to how do you explain to the user and what options do you give them in order to move forward safely. And if you just give them some examples of how you took the template and modified it 2 or 3 different ways, then maybe that would suffice for most errors.
Yeah, that's kind of an open question, right? I feel like we're getting more detailed now with some of these things than I thought we would ever get. But if there's interest for it, and if that's what people want, then that's where we're going to go. If that's the most helpful thing for projects and designers.
Yeah, I like the detail. I like that we're kind of going into the little nitty-gritty thing. I think we did pretty well getting a lot of the foundational stuff kind of sorted, and now it's going to be a lot of fine-tuning things and tweaking certain small stuff, which is good.
Yeah, there's just some stuff that we're not going to be able to get to really well because it's such a moving target, like background activities, tasks in iOS and Android, how often they happen, how reliable they are, and how many times they should happen in order to keep your wallet sync if you're an SPV on, whatever. Just making something up, but there'll be a limit to it also. Yeah, okay. Where would you like to take things next?
we spent some time talking about the whole zero amount invoice thing. The reason I ask is because there's an issue for it, and it's also pertinent to Bosch's PR because he provides some information on it. And I'd love to comment on your PR, Bosch, and I haven't like finished submitting my review yet, but so I'm not sure if it's visible to you or not. But I think that kind of, so my current understanding of the situation is that, you know, obviously there's been patches that fix a lot of the prior security vulnerabilities with zero amount invoices, but you have these situations where you have wallets like Breeze and Phoenix, and the situation with them doesn't have to do with the Lightning protocol itself. It has to do with the way that their infrastructure is set up in order to provide liquidity to the user. So they in their current situation, they can't provide zero amount invoices. To them, it would be an actual security risk. So I'm a little torn because on the one hand, yes, I do see the idea that like a zero amount invoice is a frictionless way to, you know, make your payment request and all of that. But also with like the infrastructure challenges that these companies are facing, being able to provide zero amount invoices, like we have to look forward a little bit. You know, these kind of services they're providing are going to be pretty critical to growing the Lightning network, getting new users onboarded, getting them liquidity, all of that. And I'm not an infrastructure engineer, so I don't want to just like assume that this is a trivial problem to fix. So that's why when we make a recommendation that's just like, well, everyone should support zero amount invoices, I feel a little like I don't know if we're making the right claim there. Because I don't know how easy it is for these companies to fix their infrastructure overnight, you know? I'm probably rambling a little bit, but do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, it's a. I think it's one of the things that we can just kind of recommend, and like it isn't a pretty like obvious, has pretty obvious usability benefits, and I think most companies will trend towards it. Like for example, with Phoenix, they can't do it just yet based on how they have their LSP infrastructure set up. I'm not too sure on all the technicals, but they do see the value in it, and it is going to be a thing in the future. Like they said, once trampoline payment or trampoline nodes are more widely used amongst the Lightning network, they will be doing zero amount invoices. So I think it's something that will like inevitably be in every wallet. So I don't see a big issue with recommending it. That's why I kind of had that little disclaimer there. Maybe I could reword that, but yeah, I wouldn't want to go into detail on all the like infrastructure side. It's not in the guide, that is.
For someone who's not super familiar with the use case here, am I right in thinking that this is used instead or as a replacement for addresses on chain, so that if I want to send to someone and I want to specify the amount, this is what I would do? I just think the name zero amount invoices is pretty cryptic for someone who hasn't come across it before.
Yeah, it's been kind of an issue that we've been discussing in the Lightning channel on Slack and on a couple of GitHub issues. It's a pretty obtuse name, I agree. The basic idea is that you know, when you open up your wallet and you want to request Bitcoin from somebody, do you have to type in the amount and specify how much they have to pay you, or can you just leave the amount blank and let them pay you whatever they want? So it's not necessarily like a reusable address or anything. It's still like an invoice with an expiration time. But the idea is that you know, like Moon, for example, doesn't require you to type in the amount that the person is supposed to send you. The idea being that it kind of reduces the friction that the user faces. It's just like request Bitcoin, boom, and then it gives you the QR code, and they don't have to bother in typing the amount. For some situations that wouldn't be useful. Like there may be some situations where you want to say this needs to be 5,000 sats, but there also might be some situations like a more of a social payment situation where you're holding out your phone for your friend to scan, and you can easily see how much money they're typing into it. So in that kind of situation, the frictionless zero amount invoice is quicker for people.
And just to clarify, to add to that, Daniel, it only relates to Lightning Network. It doesn't relate to on-chain. So it's only for like making like a Lightning invoice. So it's just, yeah, like Stephen said, making it a zero amount. And in the PR I have up, it also covers another issue around expiration times. Like that's a big thing with Lightning invoices. Like if you want to have a long expiration time for a particular use case, depending on what your wallet's kind of offering, you want to probably have a zero amount invoice, because you have a set amount. The set amount is going to be like fixed in probably like a fiat denominated currency. If it's a long expiry date with a set amount, that price is going to fluctuate, and like when the payment's finally made, it could be made 24 hours later and the price could change a little bit in that time. It won't be that accurate. So giving someone a zero amount invoice that they can pay and with the fiat amount of what it's equivalent to at the time of payment would give a more accurate payment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I understand it now. And yeah, personally, I think in the guide, we should not be afraid of recommending what makes the most sense for users, which in this case seems that wallets should accept or should be able to do this. And then I would leave it up to the people that may have technical issues with it or security issues to deal with it, but we can still make the recommendation. And then secondly, I guess maybe we should think of ways of talking about this in a less technical way. I'm not sure what that would be now, but like, share instead of saying, "Oh, I'm sharing a zero amount invoice with you." That's like, "Oh, what's that?" So maybe there's a
blank invoice.
Blank invoice, or even the word invoice still confuses me a bit. But I'm getting around to it. But it's in daily speak, if you're talking to friends and stuff, it's like, "Oh yeah, let me share a blank invoice." It's like, oh. I'm sure we can get used to it, but it seems a bit unfriendly.
Yeah, I just like referring to it as like a Bitcoin payment request. I think obviously there's distinction between address and invoices, but yeah, payment request sounds a bit more clearer.
That segues into another thing I wanted to bring up, which is this whole bit 21 discussion.
21? 47?
Bit 21.
The single QR codes.
Yeah, I deep dived into that over the weekend, and I love it. I mean, I think we should. I don't know. I think we should really push for that to be a standard. And here's why I think it's really good. I mean, one, it's obviously a BIP that many wallets have already implemented, and the path towards integrating Lightning in it seems like a pretty easy problem to tackle. You just add the parameter onto the end of it. But everything about this, just like having a unified QR code that would be so good, is that this would enable us to stop saying Lightning. We could just call it a Bitcoin payment request. And this one single QR code contains an on-chain address if you need it. It also contains a Lightning invoice if you need it. The advantage to that is that it's a format that is compatible with older on-chain only wallets, but can also be compatible with Lightning wallets as well. So, I mean, I love the idea. I think you uttered the phrase Bitcoin payment request, Bosch, and it just reminded me, because it's like I almost feel like we should just like coin that as a term and let that refer to a BIP21 QR code with a Lightning invoice embedded inside of it.
Yeah, totally. Need to be pretty it's on the sending side, the usability kind of like things need to be fleshed out a little bit more, but just generating one isn't a whole, like, definitely solves that issue on generating side, like pretty simply. But yeah, on the sending side, need to like definitely have like good error states and messages and how to deal with it, stuff like that. But yeah, we can get into that in the sending page. I was going to make an issue for that actually, because I kind of went ahead and just addressed it in the requesting page, but I probably should have just hit Christoph up and started doing it with the sending page as well. But it's like, yeah, we'll get there.
Yep, this is fun stuff. I'll add something to that too in my super awesome 2-hour video stream from Friday. I was looking at all of this stuff too here. Like, where was the screen? Oh, enter an address for a contact, right? Very easy. oh, what are supported addresses? Just all of this stuff here. So I ended up calling the whole thing. I said, okay, we have a node ID, we have an offer code, we have a thing called a bolt 12 address, then we have a pay request, then we have another address, then on-chain we have another type of address. We have 3 different addresses now, a bolt 12, a lightning, and a Bitcoin on-chain. And then we have a public key we can add. And none of this can be brought under one umbrella in terms of terminology in any way. So I thought, screw it. Contacts have addresses. You add an address, you type something in, it either accepts it or it doesn't. It tells you, cool, this is a valid address you can make payments to repeatedly. Or, yeah, well, this is an address you can use once. And that's it.
What you using that legacy address type for?
Sorry?
I said, what you using that legacy address type for?
Just to throw you off. But yeah. No, so
it's something users might try and do, right? They might
yeah.
try and do that.
And why not? And then just tell them, like, yeah, you can use this once. I mean, right? That's proper privacy. Sure, if you give me an address.
No, I was joking because it has a 1 in front of a BC1P.
There you go.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Just one comment as well on the contacts thing. I don't think should recommend XPubs as a like reusable payment requests. I think it's just way too big of a privacy concern. Like you may as well just use like a on-chain address repeatedly. I think it's better. Just at that point there, if you've recommended it somewhere in the contacts page while you're working on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this was an example of where I'm trying to show all of the possible options. And the bolt 12, that's all of this is draft specs, right? It's whole thing.
There's something you can do as well. What I was kind of trying to communicate to you earlier, Christoph, I don't know if I was being super clear with it, but when you share like a bolt 12, if say if I share my bolt 12 invoice with you, I can also, I think anyways, extract the node ID from that bolt 12 invoice. So if I imported a bolt 12 invoice into my wallet, I could also automatically import the node ID. But there would be cases you'd import the node ID on its own, like say if you like, I don't know, opening channels or sending key send payments. But yeah, it's just like a one thing to add.
I mean, what I want to, this is kind of the manual, this is kind of the worst way to do anything here. The real better way is when, you get an invoice and you say, well, this invoice is for Priya, right? And then if there's a repeatedly usable whatever identifier in this invoice, it's just going to save it. And if there isn't one, it's just not going to save it. And I just don't have to care. Right? I'm not dealing with the address. I'm just saying, well, this invoice, this payment is for this person. And then it's just going to link whatever identifier it finds and whatever transaction it does with that person. I just don't have to deal with any of it. And if I have something and if I have some identifier that I can make repeated payments to with that person, I see a send button. And if not, then I just don't see a send button. And the first time I encounter this stuff, it's going to tell me, well, if you want to send payments to this person, you need to add an address. So yeah, I think when you have if I've added multiple addresses too, it should just automatically figure out what's the most appropriate one, unless, I go into some setting and I just adjust it somehow. But I think we can hide a lot of this stuff. And then for superpower users, they can go in and they can maybe label them and reorder them based on their preferences or use cases or whatnot. But yeah, I feel like we can hide a ton of this stuff. It just doesn't need to be visible in the actual interactions with. It just works ideally or not. And if it doesn't work, the UI should say, well, I'm sorry, we can't do this yet for that reason.
Because I'd be interested to see how the UI would go if, like, say if I saved the node ID of you, Christoph, and then you sent me a bolt 12 payment and then a lightning address payment, but by doing some magic behind the scenes, it could tell that they're both coming from the same node ID. So I could, without saving those on a separate occasion, I've only got the node ID saved with your contact details there and like your image and stuff. It could pick up that they're both from you, even though they're different kind of reusable payment request formats. Like,
yep.
I'm not sure if like there's logic there that they'll be able to like do that behind the scenes, but that would be like ideal.
That would be
Yeah.
good. I like these ideas a lot. Just from an engineering standpoint, we would need to be a little bit cautious about some of this because, I think as like people are, more and more often not being full node operators and instead running lightweight nodes on their phone, you're probably going to have situations where people are sitting behind unannounced channels and, the node that you see in the invoice may be, not the maybe they're using some kind of trampoline node or something like that. Like I feel like just taking the node ID from the invoice and storing that as reusable payment information could start to get tricky. But I think that there's some good ideas here, like for example with the whole BIP21 thing, with these URL parameters that can be included in these things. The user when they're generating their payment request, specific details about information could be included, like optional parameters, like here's my Lightning address, or here's my Bolt 12 offer, or something to that effect. So you could actually include additional data in that BIP21 request that, as you're describing, Christoph, could be kind of stored automatically by the wallet.
Yeah.
It's there and retained in the future if it's needed.
Yeah, ln URL pay, I think you can specify an array of fields, which can be text or images. And it would then allow to create some type of interface like this, where you show an image, maybe of a product or whatever, and a description, vendor name, these types of things. But it's all unspecified, right? It could be just spam also. So we'll have to be careful with what's being automatically pulled in. But yeah, I think some of these theoretical and technical discussions, once you try to design an interface around it, you just end up in a really different place. Anyways, cool. What's next?
Just one comment, just based on one of the other discussions before. Zap, the desktop app, you can generate invoices with like fallback addresses embedded in them. So like if you wanted to go like play around with what it would feel like and look like, you can do that.
Just pulling up the roadmap here again. All of the stuff are to-dos. So once I'm done with the contacts page, I also going to pick up some other stuff. How about after the contact? So Bosch, when you're done with the requesting page, I'm done with the contacts page. How about we kind of create a bigger structured effort around this? How we rethink this navigation?
Yeah, I'm keen to do that.
Calls, some documents, whatnot.
We left that comment on the Figma about how to not have it 4 levels of collapsing. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I haven't thought about it much. Just bringing it up as a topic.
I mean, I'm just not even thinking about it. This is more what I'm talking about. When you get to the website in your limited browser window, you switch over here. You just see that there's an image missing here, and then you get the guide, and then you see that, and then if you scroll down, you see all of this stuff, and then you go on a section and you see something like that. And then you scroll down and then you see these things. And then you get to a content page and then you see that. Like, does that experience, does that work? And another aspect to this is this use case. So the way I've been, and we can you might think about this very differently. The way I thought about it is there's a designer new to Bitcoin. That's one of the use cases. And they might have all kinds of questions like, well, I know design, but I don't know Bitcoin. It sounds cool. So, what are keys? Like, where are Bitcoins stored? What is a node? That type of stuff. And for them, we have the getting started section and Steven's awesome learning Bitcoin and design calls. And they can ask questions in the community. Then there's a Bitcoiner new to design. And for them, we're going to have the designing Bitcoin product section in general. Then we have the person who knows those two things now. And this could also be a team or a project. And they might be at different stages. If somebody's in product or project discovery, they want to know, what should I build? What do people need? What are the pain points? What features are needed? How much does my audience know? They want research. They might be interested in common user flows and software overview. And the community resources are different. They might want to share concepts. They might want to talk about research or have other discussions. Then if like an early project has happened, and that seems to be working, but somebody kind of threw it together, then they're like, well, now we have more people. We need a proper design process, but we have no design files. And our logo is free clip art from some website. Like, what do we do now? Like, how do we build a design process? And for them, like, we kind of have the Bitcoin design sprints for them in a way. This is kind of a little bit what's happening with Lixt, I think, right now. Not totally, but roughly. And then we have the next thing is more expector. Like, okay, we have a working application, but we have some issues, some small things, screen-specific small things that could be fixed that are not right. And the next one is, the whole user flow, our onboarding sucks, or the way we're receiving in our application sucks. Like, what's the content that's interesting and helpful for people with that problem? And then we have another one's called new feature addition. Like, we want to add a tip jars, or we want to support multi-sig wallets or a contacts feature. So that's kind of how I was breaking things down. And then every single one of these personas or use cases or whatever, they're looking for different things. And sometimes people want these content pages. Sometimes people want more the generic stuff. And then maybe something like this is helpful then if we rethink how people navigate the guide. How does that sound?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think the overview page we've discussed quite a few times would do a lot of the heavy lifting here. We just have to make sure it makes a lot of sense and targets those particular use cases. But
yeah, I think about the user personas in a very similar way. I mean, that could be good on the on the homepage to, try and speak to those different paths you could take, when absorbing the content.
Yeah. And so Bosch, your navigation exploration is one angle. This document is one angle. Then these old mock-ups from a few months ago, there's another angle, and somewhere between all of those things, ideally, we can build something on top.
Well, I think they would all complement each other, really. I guess the navigation would be if you just wanted to go through linearly and just kind of search through pages. Like I wouldn't navigate the guide how you kind of went through it before. I'd go collapse. I'd open the collapsible menus and kind of go through and click directly into the page that I was interested in. I wouldn't go onto the page and then click the link on the page. If that makes sense.
Well, you wouldn't, but what would you be looking for? You're not just like a person randomly looking for nice sounding page titles. What's your role?
I don't know, I'm just having a bit of an overview, seeing kind of what topics we cover in the guide, give you a general sense. You might not be looking for anything in particular. You might just be having a general kind of broad look. But that overview page could also do that. But yeah, you could also do that in the side menu.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we'll have to experiment with all that. And that document, you have edit rights to it from here. So feel free to edit, write, change stuff. And I didn't worry about the contribution use case in here.
All right, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be cool to get the restructuring done by the next jam session. I don't think it'd be a whole lot of work on the implementation, writing copy and stuff.
I think you might be underestimating that. I mean, if we might come to a point where we might have to rewrite a whole bunch of stuff, and maybe that's something that we just want to do a little bit by bit. So I don't know. I mean, you're very optimistic about it. I'm a little bit more careful, I guess.
Well, I think combining with the daily spending wallet, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. It might cause some other issues down the line, and there might be better ways to do it, but I think it would be better than what we currently have. So I think I don't see a issue with doing that, and it would only be really creating one extra page, and you could just create a banner image for that, and you could do that in a couple of hours, and I think that would have a noticeable benefit on the readability of the guide. And we might change that later on, but I think things like that are like, we could definitely just go ahead and kind of do for now.
Yeah. So, Pav, next, did Daniel leave?
Yeah, he said he had to go.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I think this is one thing where I would not be comfortable if just one or two people do it. I feel like we need to give people, include groups of people and allow more people to give input and have time to be comfortable, because we're doing it for these other people, right? What makes sense to me or you might not make sense to others. I could actually see us creating a draft PR for this that lives on for several weeks, where we just gotta do stuff and then see how it feels, how it works out. Like a parallel.
Yeah, I'm in
version.
agreement. I'm in agreement. We should proceed a little. We should get it done, but we should definitely proceed a little bit slowly, and just not slowly, but we just want to make sure we're doing this right. I mean, we got a lot of things we got to look at. Christoph's saying we need to make sure that we're actually producing what people want. So we want to get feedback from people, especially people who aren't regulars on this design jam call. So that would be one thing, is just getting a wider amount of feedback on how the navigation system is going to, work. And then I think, I mean, there's actually implementing it, making sure that the content, matches, seeing if we need to edit anything, and also just the technical side of like testing it and making sure that we're not breaking a bunch of URLs and links. We don't want like 404 errors popping up because, we've changed the name of this page or that page, or put it in a new directory or something like that. So again, we should get it done. We should get it done as soon as possible, but we should just like make sure that we're covering all these details when we do that, I think.
And I think there are also some things in there that are small that we can just do, but there are some things in there that are big. Okay, all right. Are we good on that topic or anything else? Bosch, I know you want to move fast.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm easy though. Like, I don't know. This is how I guess I'll do it. But yeah.
It's been bugging you, this topic. I know.
I just want to combine the daily spending into like that one section. The other areas that I'm kind of made stuff about, I'm not really like too phased on. But like currently at the moment, like say if I had no idea what this guide meant and I jumped on and I went onboarding, like I'd be like, I wouldn't have an idea of what kind of product that onboarding was for at like a glance. Like if I went into it, it would be pretty obvious. But yeah, just that like one thing, I guess, like it makes a lot of sense to me to do. But we can talk about it some more.
Okay. All right, hold on. What did we have anything else on the list here? Yeah, Stephen, the reading group, or the learning, hold on, what's it called? Learning Bitcoin Design.
Learning Bitcoin and Design. I think that's what it's called. Can't remember, to be honest.
So that's kind of like this here in a way, right?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely targeted to that persona.
I mean, that's really excellent. And it seemed like the call was really helpful. People were eager to continue.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who's not aware of what we're talking about, I mean, basically I did kind of a lightning primer for designers call last week, just with the thinking that we've got a lot of new contributors who weren't here when we all read Mastering Lightning together. So I just wanted to kind of try and help bring them up to speed. And there was people were very engaged with it, a lot of conversation and questions, and everyone kind of expressed on the call that they wanted to keep doing stuff like that. So I just made a generic Learning Bitcoin and Design call for, I think it's tomorrow is the next one. We're probably going to try and do them on Wednesdays more, but I had a conflict this week. But yeah, we're probably just going to be doing this call maybe once a week, or we're just going to have to see how it goes, because we haven't even done 2 of them yet. But the idea is that there'll be some kind of topic to discuss every week, and it will just be kind of aimed at bringing the designers up to speed on the technology. in a high level overview kind of way, just kind of helping to give people the tools that they need in order to design for Bitcoin.
Yep. It was
We'll
really
just
good.
kind of see how it goes. We'll see what the
Mm.
format is. We'll see how people like it and what kinds of stuff people want. And I'm a little unsure about where it's going at this point. I'm just kind of going with the flow and seeing what people like.
Yeah. Yeah, I would also, like I mentioned in the call, with the Bitcoin design sprints, I think they're going to look heavily at onboarding in Lightning wallets and this initial funding. So reading the pages related to that. And I know Mo and Millie are working on that project too, and maybe others. So there might be some good overlap there too, where those two projects help each other out. That'd be cool. Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes left here. Is everybody comfortable just kind of working away at their things over the next few weeks? Is there anything we should change? We don't have timelines for those milestones. We kind of keep adding things to them and taking things off when they're done. Is that cool?
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything here that seems really tricky or impossible, or anything old that we should just delete?
I was interested in addressing that Lightning Reserve issue that Steve posted, but if anyone had any thoughts around that, I haven't
Yeah.
kind of deep dive into it yet, but just kind of been reading about things and making sure I know how it works exactly, because it seems like it's different from each implementation as well. So there's that kind of aspect.
After the first call, the Lightning primer call, I was wondering, because the liquidity stuff was actually a big topic that Stephen had to explain with a whole fig jam and graphics. And the reserve is also so I was wondering if we should just have another page about liquidity that just sums all this stuff up, and it can use an abacus or whatever, beads on strings and whatnot to explain it.
Yeah, I think that'd be actually pretty good.
Yeah, I would love a liquidity page. I know we don't like using that word, but I think that the designer needs to be educated on it. Like I don't know if the user always needs to be educated on it. Ideally, we make it as easy on the user as possible, but I think that the designers definitely, that's one of those kind of tech concepts that you need to understand. And like the technology primer page is really good page. I think it's telling a story, but I mean, one thing I kind of learned going through that call is that I don't think the tech primer page is enough to get people up to speed on liquidity.
Yeah.
I guess another thing regarding the restructuring, like I know we've kind of talked a bit about in the past, like where we would kind of place the private key management section, and I guess more areas of the guide which are like more reference, I guess, like similar to say like the liquidity page, like there's sections where you want to go maybe deep dive on a particular topic. It's not something you would explore in depth, like on a area of the guide that was covering like a particular type of product, like the daily spending wallet or something. But how would you guys like see a section of the guide like that? Would you just have like a chapter that then had like, the private key management section within that, and then like a section of liquidity section that covered like other more technical topics that are relevant to designers?
I mean, I see this as that there should be a how it works section, and then we just have stuff in there.
Yeah. Checking how it works.
It could be called technologies, but I think that's the idea. Just how does this work? That's what you're there for, and you don't want to know how it works in detail with, every single, encryption detail and whatnot, but just generally, how does this system work?
Yeah, definitely. And how it's relevant, I guess, designers, like the depth of knowledge they should have on a particular topic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like how it works chapter, it sounds good. We'll put the private key management in there, have sections on like bips and bolts, maybe liquidity.
Makes me think of these kids shows and books. Don't they have all these? Oh, does this work? Like a construction site, or I don't know, all these different topics.
Would that be something you guys would put like later in the guide that's like you more reference to throughout the main kind of meat of the guide, like the daily spending wallet section, or would it be something you want to have like earlier on in the guide that you think is probably good to have some context before you kind of dive into like the real meat of the guides, like the case study areas?
I think what is the beginning of the guide? Ooh-wee, ooh-wee. I was asking a deep philosophical. No, well, I don't think I probably iterated this. I probably said this opinion before, but I don't think people are going to intake it literally or linearly. And so, like, I think that it doesn't even matter what we think the beginning of the guide is, because I think that people are going to, Google search something and find a link and, end up on a page for a specific topic, or they're going to click on the one that's interesting to them. So, I mean, I personally, I just kind of visualize it as like the technology section or the how it works section. Just, you have like kind of a section that's just kind of about these like fundamental concepts. Whether it's about private key management, whether it's about liquidity, nodes needing to be online, but just these kind of like high level overviews about the technology. And like different people might like kind of like, if we think about it like less in terms of like what is the beginning of the guide and more like what is your path. So like each one of those like personas, like designer trying to learn about Bitcoin, Bitcoiner trying to learn about design, or Bitcoin or designer trying to build a product. Like these are all different paths, and each user is going to take a different path. So this like technology concept section, some of these users may completely bypass the technology concept section on their path. Other users are going to want that at the beginning of their path. Others might refer to it at different points on their path. So that maybe was, I don't know, a more convoluted answer than you wanted.
No, that's exactly the reason why I wasn't too sure where to put it. So I was like, yeah.
Yeah, different places. The tech primer is in getting started, but then the deeper aspects to it, I would put those in how it works. And it's good that they're loose and kind of independent, because they come up, liquidity comes up in lots of other pages, and then we can always just link to it for if somebody's not familiar with it from all of those different places.
Yeah, that'd be great. Instead of having to explain liquidity or explain, some of these concepts, you can just link to that page, and it'll probably reduce redundant text throughout the guide as well, which would be very nice.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of those areas we can do that and like kind of reference things rather than talk about them in the particular sections. I think that would be a bit more clearer when we go through these case studies and stuff like that. But
Stephen, how are you doing with orphan control?
I haven't touched it. I've been focusing on more important stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious how long that's going to live. Rise contribute page. Yeah, it'd be cool to trim. Like there are 46 open issues right now. It'd be cool to cut that in half in the next few weeks.
yeah,
and then new
sure.
stuff will come up. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to go over? Anything organizational? Do you need more feedback? You want to have more collaborative sessions? Anything else? I started doing these live streams, which are kind of interesting because when you stream stuff yourself working live, it makes you more aware. It sharpens the focus. Anything you'd like to do or change or do differently next few weeks?
Nothing really comes to mind. Definitely just chop through the issues. Like, yeah, it'd be good to just go through, get the ones done that maybe aren't that fun, but yeah, could be clean it all up.
We need to get all this shit closed before the next design jam call. least all this milestone 13 stuff, I think.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So another question too with this activity page, should we try to go around and like talk to wallets and just see if they can implement some of these types of things too, or should we just let it sit there and exist? I mean, same with zero amount settings, Lightning invoice expirations. Like whenever we're done with an issue, should we say, okay, cool, now we'll tack on an extra effort to communicate with wallets around this?
Yeah, I definitely think every time we introduce some new kind of content in the guide, we should maybe make a little list of like pretty clearly defined recommendations we could make based on the new content, write something up, reference the guide heavily, go around to relevant wallets and just like let them know at least and communicate with them and be like, hey, this could help your wallet. There's new content there. Check it out.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. And just a heads up, at some point soon, I probably have to set aside a whole week to update the Bitcoin UI kit with everything that you guys did, everything that I did, and make sure it's all fairly consistent and up to date. And which with Daniel working on his new project and Matthew, who's been building the Swift version of the Bitcoin UI kit, he's also been doing updates there. It'd be cool if all of this actually adds up together. So, maybe we even have fully functional versions of a lot of these flows that we're putting together in these pages at some point. That'd be awesome. Okay, cool. We're on to the hour. Anything else? You good? Everybody quiet? I'm just rambling. Should we wrap it up?
Just thinking about this bulk file send invoice thing. I don't think it is really like, Rusty said it's like LMU withdrawal, but I don't think it is. It's more like I send you an invoice through the Lightning Network rather than generating an invoice and then sharing it out of band, which is cool. It's definitely like a better way to do it. But yeah, it's not like LMU withdrawal that you wouldn't really use it for receipts. But maybe I don't understand it completely, but that's kind of the general gist I've got from just reading convos about it.
Yeah, agreed. I believe it does actually go through Lightning messages instead of out of band. But so it's, kind of a Lightning native way of doing that. I think as far as the user is concerned, it functionally does the same thing. But yeah, at a protocol level, I think it's very different.
You'd have to work out how you do it in the UI. Like if someone sent you a request, it'd have to come up in your activity feed. You have to click on that request and go and pay it. So you'd have to kind of, on that receiving side of the person receiving the invoice, be some.
Sorry, can you say that again? So the situation is,
so I can
want
send
to
you an invoice through the Lightning Network directly to your wallet. So a good example is Zebedee. They have like a request feature using their LN address, and you can request to like another Zebedee user. So if you look at the kind of UI UX flow around that, like their requesting thing, it's pretty much the same. It'd essentially be the same as that. But yeah, so I send it through the network, and then you'd get a ping on your wallet saying, hey, like this person sent you an invoice. Do you want to pay it? And then you can pay it if you want.
Okay, doing that over Lightning.
Yeah, so through the network, which I could see being an issue potentially with spam. Like, or just someone just spam the shit out of your wallet with like crap loads of invoices. But I guess that's why Bolt 12 hasn't been fully spec'd out yet. I think there's a lot of stuff to kind of work out.
Yeah, from that conversation, what did you share or somebody else? It seems it sounded like, or it was a Twitter thing or wherever I saw it. It sounded like Bolt 12 is just massively growing, and there's just there are a ton of features in there, and it's just impossible to properly just say that you're going to implement it because it's just so complex. Did you see that conversation?
Yeah, it was huge.
Also heard conflicting opinions on that as well. So
I kind of like more lent towards the being cautious kind of thing. I think that's always the best kind of path to take with anything to do with Bitcoin. Like you don't want to mess the incentives up and potentially cause some issue that can't be fixed later on.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's the current situation, then that means that it will probably take a few years for this to be super solid, and then that means we'll have to live with the ln URL for the time being, and whatever certain features just simply not being smooth or not working. So it just seems like it's just going to take time. It will take years, right? Or what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think it will take a long time, and I think bulk flow is going to be here maybe even this year, maybe early next year or so.
But you mean the spec will be finalized, but then the implementations are a different story, or?
Well, there's already implementation in C Lightning and Eclair, if I understand correctly, and I think LDK is already working on it. L&D, I think in the discussion thread you're referencing, it sounds like it's kind of like much farther down the roadmap for them, if I understood the conversation correctly.
Yeah,